Hi guys, my name is Summer J and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm starting this YouTube channel to have a safe space to discuss different topics and to also talk about travel and things that I really enjoy. But my first topic out of the chute will be on long COVID. The reason I want to talk about long COVID is because I'm recently getting over an upper respiratory infection. And while I was in the bed resting, I saw on Good Morning America a story about 10% of people who are still suffering with long COVID, and that people of color are being having the most problems, if you will, with receiving long COVID care. And as a person of color who had or has long COVID, and I've had it twice now, um, I've the first time I had COVID, it triggered asthma and an autoimmune arthritis. That was in from my March of 2020 infection, and then in January of 2021, January of 2022, I had another really bad case of COVID, and it left me having to have oxygen for 6 months, and my hair fell out, and yeah, it was, had a partially collapsed lung, so it really did a number on me. But what I want to hone in on and focus on is the fact that it seems like, at least from my personal experience, I had an experience where I went to earlier on in COVID, in March. It was in April of 2020. I remember going to the doctor after the fact, and we were in a lockdown state, but I was having problems breathing. And the first time I went to that urgent care, the doctor there gave me an inhaler and an antibiotic, and it seems like at the time I didn't know, but that every time I would take the round of antibiotics or the steroids, by the time I was, whatever I was dealing with was good while I was on the medication. But as soon as I finished the antibiotic, or I was coming off the steroids, then my symptoms would flare back up. At the time, I didn't know I had acquired an autoimmune arthritis condition from COVID. And it wasn't until I took some time off in August of 2020, and I went through a whole gamut of testing, that I realized that it was discovered that like my hormones had tanked, like COVID had kicked me into menopause, and just a whole litany of things were going on. But one of my tests revealed like a rheumatoid factor was high. So from there, I ended up contacting a rheumatologist to see if I could get some treatment or some testing done in that arena to figure out, well, why did my rheumatoid factor come up high? And it was the end of September before they were able to officially diagnose me with, it was called non-radiographic ankylosing spondylitis. And it was called non-radiographic because they couldn't see the damage that was going on until they did an MRI. So they had completed the x-rays and everything was looking okay, but when she did the MRI, that's when she was able to see what was really going on. They started me off on a medication called Taltz. I was on that for maybe about 6 months, and you have to understand, I was dealing with fatigue, that I was fatigued like out of a month, I would say 4 weeks out of a month. So when I started taking the Taltz, at least it gave me some relief that I could be back to my somewhat old self for 3 weeks out of 4, which was, I thought was good, since from April or May until I started the Taltz, it was 4 weeks out of 4 weeks I was not feeling well and didn't have any energy, and I was just fatigued. So to get 3 good weeks, I was like, oh yeah, I'll take 3 good weeks compared to 4. But I noticed the Taltz started wearing off, and then I would be good maybe half the month, and then it got to the point I was good for 1 week out the month, and so we ended up changing to Cosentyx. I was on Cosentyx for, I would say, a little over a year, but I knew Cosentyx wasn't working, and the doctors weren't willing to change me because my husband was active duty military and we moved a lot and we were getting ready to move and they couldn't monitor me with the new medication. So I had to suck it up with Cosentyx for a while. And then I got COVID again this second time in January of 2022 or December of 2021. I had the symptoms, but I wasn't testing positive. And it took me about 19 days to test positive, although I had the symptoms the whole time. In that particular instance, I had I had developed hives with that one. I even went to see my dermatologist and I was like, hey, something's going on. And he was like, oh no, you're good. Some people in my family had the same thing. I'm just thinking it's a viral infection is what he told me. Some people at my holiday family gathering had the same thing going on, so you should be good. And I was like, okay, so that was Wednesday. By the time I got to the end of the week, I was fatigued again and just not feeling well. And then by Sunday morning, I'd gone to the urgent care and they were like, oh, well, let's give you a COVID test. I was like, oh, no, it's not COVID. I've already been tested twice. And the lady was like, well, let's just test one more time. And she came back and was like, oh, yeah, you have COVID like right now. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And that round of COVID was very difficult. I didn't realize, and they didn't realize either, until I was at the hospital. I had gone to the emergency room several times. They, because I was having shortness of breath. So what was going on was if I was walking a lot or if I was talking a lot like this, like my oxygen levels were dropping below what's considered an acceptable amount. And so they ended up putting me on oxygen for like 6 months with that after that round of COVID. But one of the things I noticed was when I would go to the emergency room when I was having problems, like serious problems breathing, that they would give me all these lab tests and they would ask me, do you drink? Well, I don't drink. The last time I had a drink was when I was in college more than 20 years ago, but my liver, it was like I had like fatty liver or something going on, or I don't remember exactly what it was, but to be there looking for assistance with my breathing and they're asking me, pretty much, am I drinking? And I'm like, no. And the way they kept asking me was like they didn't believe me. And I'm like, really? And so that's one instance I had where I was trying to seek treatment and, getting a side eye. But earlier on when I had COVID the first time, I was saying I would go, I went to urgent care because at the time the symptoms I had, they weren't consistent with what was known as COVID. And so I went to urgent care after I thought I had cleared the whatever I had, not knowing that it had triggered asthma. And the first time I went, the lady gave me the inhaler and she gave me some antibiotics. And as the antibiotics wore off, I was starting to cycle back through getting sick again. And so I went to urgent care again after work. And the lady was like, well, your lungs sound clear to me. Well, unbeknownst to me, because I didn't have asthma, didn't know that when I took the inhaler, because I had shortness of breath before I went to urgent care, that it calmed down whatever I had going on. And so no, she couldn't hear that I had, or didn't understand that I'd had an asthma attack, or nor did she understand, because she wasn't trying to understand. She was more concerned with asking me if I was having anxiety. So that's not all of the instances where I've been questioned about what I was feeling or what I had going on in terms of me starting this channel. I know that even though I have really good medical insurance, that didn't negate the fact that the things I was going through were being overlooked. So I want to get the conversation going and get everyone equal access to care for treatment of their long COVID. For people who have, for people who are in cities or places where they have long COVID clinics, I think those places would be a really good place to start in terms of getting total or holistic care. Because for me, just with the upper respiratory infection I had, where I was diagnosed with it on June the 6th, but it took until like June 22nd. That's like 3 trips to the urgent care, 2 trips to my primary care, and then 1 trip to the emergency room, 4 rounds of antibiotics, 3 rounds of steroids for them to figure out I had a mycoplasma infection, and then they finally put me on the right type of antibiotics to fight it. So if the holistic care approach would work best for people who have long COVID, I don't understand how and why we can't get those resources in place, especially for people of color who are having the hardest time getting care for long COVID. So that's just the first topic I want to talk to you guys about on my YouTube channel. And I want to make sure that not only are we talking about long COVID, I also want to make sure we're talking about neurodiversity in terms of specifically autism. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with autism. And so I want to make sure that people of color, especially women of color, are getting the resources and care we need. I want to walk you through how to go about getting tested for autism. Not everyone has the same level of autism. That's why it's called a spectrum. I have the type that is not, there aren't any cognitive impairments or anything like that. So, as I was saying, there are 3 levels of autism. There's ASD 1, 2, and 3. I am in category 1 with no cognitive or language impairments. So, in most cases, if you do not know me very well, you wouldn't know unless I told you. But I think there's a stigma around ASD in the point that I've noticed that when I did disclose to certain people that I had ASD, that they began to act different, and or they assume that everyone has level 3, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, and things of that nature. And so I that's the other part of why I'm starting this channel, so we can have some productive conversations, so that people can get a better understanding and an education of autism spectrum disorder, but not only autism spectrum disorder, but how to go about getting tested, how to go about finding the resources, and so that you know that not all tests are created equal. There's just one test, and I'll get into it in a later video, that is usually like the baseline test, but that test is for like 3 to 5 year olds. So if you're in your 40s asking a question about, do you remember what you did or how you were as a 3 to 5 year old, is ludicrous in my opinion. But there's a whole panel of tests that they can take to help you understand or get the information you're seeking, if that's information you're seeking. So that's something else, and that's a video further down the road that we'll go into that will cover testing for autism and the different types of autism, and if there are any particular conversations or questions you have regarding autism spectrum disorder as it relates to either from being diagnosed as an older person, or how to find the right doctor, put those questions or comments in the chat box, and then we can do a little deep dive on that information. And also, I would like to go further into flipping back over to long COVID. Um, I would like to dig a little deeper into the different things that one may be experiencing or things that I've personally experienced, and go into a lot more detailed, if you will, on things like maybe brain fog or menopause or um, um, the autoimmune arthritis, the asthma, um, anything that you may experience or want to know more about, being on oxygen, and that has to do with long COVID. I would like to discuss it here. Any suggestions or things that are maybe working where you are as a long COVID patient, we'd like to be able to discuss that here and share the resources with others, so that the 10% of people who are still having the long COVID um, symptoms, and especially the people of color who are having the issues with getting the right amount of care or the proper care, we can kind of start driving those conversations, so that it doesn't matter where you are or what walk of life you're coming from. Everyone can have the access to the same amount of care. Not only the same amount of care, but I think having doctors in place who genuinely care about their patients may be another obstacle to address or overcome. I think having um, options in place when you're in areas where maybe the resources for maybe an endocrinologist or a pulmonologist or a rheumatologist are very limited, you may have to travel to a larger city to get the level of care you, number one, deserve, and number two, that you're expecting. So those are some of the things that we're going to talk about and address on this channel. And then, of course, once we get past all of the rigmarole of people not getting the proper care, or people of color not getting the proper care for long COVID, or needing help or not getting the proper resources for autism spectrum disorder, of course, I'm going to sprinkle in some not so dreary topics, if you will, and share some travel experiences, share some restaurant experiences, or places that are unique or that may be voted as the best place to go, or the best this or best that. Maybe I can go check them out and let you know, are they really the best place, or what's going on there? And I just like to share restaurants or places that I think are really good. And when I say really good, I mean, if I hadn't gone there, but I wanted to know what was it like so I can go there, those are some of the things I like to do as well. So I hope you will come back and join me again for future conversations. Please like, comment, and subscribe to this video. And this is my very first YouTube video, so I had somewhere to go today and I couldn't use the excuse of I won't make my video because I don't have the right thing on. So don't expect this in the future. I'm just gonna come on here and do my thing, but for my first showing, I wanted to show up, if you will. I look forward to growing this channel with you all, answering any questions you may have of me regarding the things I've discussed so far. And I just want to say thank you for joining, and I'll see you next time on